I'm Mark Mallet, and you're listening to the Now Word. Are you finding it increasingly difficult to know what is real on the internet and what is not? Well, the World Wide Web has become a veritable sea of lies. It's estimated that a quarter to a third of Facebook and X accounts are fake, constituting hundreds of millions of false users that are merely programmed or bots. That means many comments you read may actually be artificially generated through algorithms in order to make it appear that a certain post is supported or not. Well, now with the advent of so-called artificial intelligence, we've entered a new era of mass deception unlike anything humanity has ever experienced. AI is capable of generating deep fake photos, audio, and video that can realistically fabricate or alter a person's appearance, their voice, or speech. I recently heard a video of my voice, and someone else made this, where I was speaking perfect Spanish. Beyond the word taco and maybe something else, I don't know Spanish. It was remarkable. AI can generate realistic videos out of thin air or alter existing ones to create fantastical scenes. You've probably seen this by now. Well, I receive weekly emails from people sharing videos of Pope Leo or other speakers thinking they're real when they're complete fabrications. And as a footnote, I always tell people that they need to verify the original source, such as the Vatican's website, a diocesan page, or even a story from an official news site. Check it out before you believe it. Well, today people's phone lines, their texts and emails are also overrun with elaborate schemes aimed at robbing them of their savings. Scammers prey on their trust and goodwill of folks who hand over their financial information or access keys and codes, thinking that they're just protecting themselves. And here again, may I add, if you ever get a call from someone posing as a border, bank, tax agent, etc., and they want to sort out a financial issue, just hang up, log into your account, or go to that institution's official website and call them back from there. Any serious issue should always be flagged on your account or in the internal messages or notifications on that website. Well, as I wrote recently, we have entered Satan's golden hour when his character is being plainly exposed for those with eyes to see. As Jesus warned in John chapter 8, "You belong to your father the devil, and you willingly carry out your father's desires. He was a murderer from the beginning and does not stand in truth, because there is no truth in him. When he tells a lie, he speaks in character, because he is a liar and the father of lies." Moreover, Jesus goes on to say in John chapter 10, "A thief comes only to steal and slaughter and destroy. I came so that they might have life and have it more abundantly." Here in just a few short sentences, our Lord revealed the entire program of Satan that is now reaching its crescendo in our times. Communism is essentially the social ideology whose goal is to completely restructure society's fundamental order. History has shown repeatedly that communism does so by stealing wealth and property, slaughtering resistors, and destroying history. It steals human creativity and supplants it with government control. It slaughters human rights and social unity. It destroys culture and subverts religion, ultimately making the state a religion itself. My friends, communism is the penultimate utopian deception of the Antichrist. As it says in the Catechism of the Catholic Church in number 676, the Antichrist deception already begins to take shape in the world every time the claim is made to realize within history that messianic hope which can only be realized beyond history through the eschatological judgment, that is, through the end time final judgment. Well, my long-term readers have no doubt heard me quote Pope John Paul II for 20 years now, in his warning while he was still a cardinal, that we, and I quote, "We are now facing the final confrontation between the church and the anti-church, between the gospel and the anti-gospel." But did you hear what he said right before that? Again, this is from the Eucharistic Congress in 1976 when he came as a cardinal to speak to the clergy. He said, "We are now standing in the face of the greatest historical confrontation humanity has ever experienced. I do not think," he said, "that the wide circle of the American society or the whole wide circle of the Christian community realize this fully." Well, that confrontation, which was reaching its Cold War peak as he was about to become the next pope, was with communism. Thus, John Paul II added, "It is a trial, perhaps the greatest trial through which humanity must pass, a trial of 2,000 years of culture and Christian civilization in all of its consequences for the dignity of man, the rights of the individual, and the rights of nations." And man, we can see we're going through this trial right now. Well, recall how the early church was born after Pentecost. It was born into authentic community. Believers sold their belongings in freedom through charity in order to care for the needs of one another. You can read that in Acts chapter 2. Now, communism, on the other hand, is Satan's direct mimicry and mockery of Christian community. It seeks economic equality through coercion, not charity. It appeals to social justice while ignoring moral culpability. It appeals to fairness while crushing freedom. And this is why Pope after Pope has openly condemned the Freemasons, who were not only the authors of this ideology, but its global financiers. In his encyclical against atheistic communism, Pope Pius XI lamented that the errors of Russia, that is Marxism, atheism, socialism, materialism, and so on, that Our Lady of Fatima warned would spread throughout the world, they were in fact doing so, embodied in communism. Pius XI also framed this revolution as the greatest challenge to the Church in her entire history. I'm quoting him again from that encyclical Divini Redemptoris, where he said, "This modern revolution, it may be said, has actually broken out or threatens everywhere, and it exceeds in amplitude and violence anything yet experienced in the preceding persecutions launched against the Church. Our words are now receiving sorry confirmation from the spectacle of the bitter fruits of subversive ideas, which we foresaw and foretold, and which are in fact multiplying fearfully in the countries already stricken or threatening every other country of the world." My friends, communism has not died. It's merely changed hats. It's buried beneath new euphemisms like climate justice or sustainability and development, equality, anti-racism, the Great Reset, Build Back Better, etc., etc. But its goals, my friends, remain the same. And this is Pope Leo XIII in Humanum Genus. This is an encyclical on Freemasonry in which he said, "That which is their ultimate purpose forces itself into view, namely, the utter overthrow of that whole religious and political order of the world which the Christian teaching has produced, and the substitution of a new state of things in accordance with their ideas, of which the foundations and laws shall be drawn from mere naturalism." Well, listen, it sounds at times like a Christian ethos, doesn't it? Those words, again, equality, anti-racism, justice, and so on. But in practice, it's the antithesis of Christianity. That's why it's so deceptive, especially among the youth today, who are, I quote, Pius XI said, they're still too immature to recognize the intrinsic errors of the system. Well, consider these recent disturbing polls which reveal that the youth, who are the future of the world, are seemingly ready to embrace this anti-Christic ideology, particularly in the West. For instance, in the United States, 52% of the Gen Z aged 18 to 28 see socialism in a favorable light. In the UK, it's 61%. In Germany, 58%. In Canada, 66%. If you go to this podcast, which I have in writing, it's called Lyin, Signs and Wonders, and you can find this graph that breaks it down that I'm quoting these numbers here of how socialism, which is really just the first stages of communism, is being accepted by the youth, particularly here in the West. As Cardinal Robert Sarah warned in 2019, the spiritual crisis involves the entire world, but its source is in Europe. People in the West are guilty of rejecting God. The spiritual collapse thus has a very Western character. Well, before passing from this world, Emeritus Pope Benedict XVI was quoted in a letter sent in 2015 to Vladimir Polko, a retired Bratislava statesman who lived through the Cold War. And this is what Benedict wrote. We see how the power of the Antichrist is expanding, and we can only pray that the Lord will give us strong shepherds who will defend his church in this hour of need from the power of evil. Wow. Well, in his teaching on the coming of the Antichrist, St. Paul warned of this lawless one, who I quote in 2 Thessalonians 2, he said, whose coming springs from the power of Satan in every mighty deed and in signs and wonders that lie. 2,000 years ago, believers might have assumed that the false prophets who would come would perform deceptive miracles along the line of Pharaoh's magicians who turned their staffs into snakes, or maybe imitating miracles like Christ did, raising the dead and so forth. But today, could the actual signs and wonders that lie not be technology itself, whereby reality and deception have virtually become indistinguishable? Again, if you go to the writing of this podcast, I've got a couple videos there where you can watch artificial intelligence and you can see the line between reality and deception is virtually indistinguishable. It's completely blurred. Clearly, all of humanity is utterly captivated by these technological feats today as we collectively gaze into our devices and scroll through reel after reel of social media posts, videos, games, pornography, sadly, and more. If Satan is a liar and a murderer, a thief who comes to steal, slaughter, and destroy, what is ruining and robbing this generation more of its innocence and trust than internet content that is intentionally meant to addict us and deceive us through constant surveillance and clever algorithms? Well, in case anyone thinks what I'm saying here is hyperbole or conspiracy theory, it was the Vatican itself that drew this very parallel of the Antichrist and artificial intelligence. Transhumanist Elon Musk referred to AI as an attempt to build, I quote, a digital God, and even, he said, summoning the demon. Well, according to the Vatican's recent document, Antiqua et Nova, this is on artificial intelligence, it said, the presumption of substituting God for an artifact of human making is idolatry, a practice Scripture explicitly warns against. Moreover, AI may prove even more seductive than traditional idols. For unlike idols that have mouths but do not speak, eyes but do not see, and ears but do not hear, AI can speak, or at least gives the illusion of doing so. And then the Vatican makes a reference to Revelation 13:15. Well, the scriptural reference to Revelation 13:15 included in the document speaks of the coming Antichrist and a false prophet who, I quote, was then permitted to breathe life into the beast's image so that the beast's image could speak and could have anyone who did not worship it put to death. Again, that's Revelation chapter 13:15. Have any of you noticed how artificial intelligence can now take images of the past, your old photos of the past deceased ones, and breathe life into them? So you can now find apps that will take your photo and bring them to life, literally breathing life into them again. In other words, my friends, the Lyin signs and wonders of the Antichrist may very well be appearing on the screens we're transfixed by. Watch and pray, Jesus warned us. Watch and pray.